In the last video, Sakamoto and his family were able to successfully infiltrate the Okutabi lab and save Lu from the scientists that kidnapped her. Meeting up with a top member of Slur's gang, Kashima, the group who originally put a bounty on retired Sakamoto's head, Sakamoto defeated Mr. Reindeer and made it home in time for dinner with his wife and daughter. However, no new information on Sakamoto's bounty was discovered. But with the order on high alert now, and the assassin killer Slur still out there won't be an end to the troubles plaguing the Sakamoto family until the bounty is cut off from the source. And speaking about the past, coming back to haunt them, an enigmatic figure from Lu's triad history has just landed in Japan with intentions of bringing Lu back to China so she can lead the triads in her father's absence. They attempt to take Lu by force, but after a brief introduction to Sakamoto's game, they realize it's probably better to sit and talk like a civilized human being instead of immediately pulling a gun on a random stranger. The triad member introduces himself as Wu-Tang, and Lu declines the proposal to become the leader of her clan without hesitation. With how much of a bond the Sakamoto crew has formed up till this point, Lu would much rather work as a cashier making minimum wage than be the treasured princess of a lucrative crime family. Surely a relatable life decision. Wu-Tang proposes an old-fashioned parlay, a challenge where if Wu-Tang wins, he brings Lu back home. But if Sakamoto wins, Wu-Tang will provide him with the crucial information on Slur and where the bounty on Sakamoto's head originated. Both Shin and Sakamoto decline, refusing to play with Lu's livelihood like that. But surprisingly, Lu accepts the game, claiming she wants to prove she can put herself on the line to help her new family. The group arrives at an underground casino where the game is to see who can win the most chips in a set amount of time. And even though none of them are experienced gamblers, the Sakamoto family is able to get by on their wits alone. Shin's mind reading puts him at an advantage in poker despite not even knowing how to play, and Sakamoto's sleight of hand easily allows him to cheat in the game of roulette. But up against Wu-Tang, a master card counter in blackjack, the two parties end up in a draw with 87,630 chips each, deciding it best to settle the tie with a more casual game, like Old Maid. The gang isn't so lucky this time around, because not only is Lu proving to be the weakest link in the family, having the absolute worst poker face this side of the Mason-Dixon, when Shin tries to read Wu-Tang's mind, he literally just gets attacked by Gojo's unlimited void. This loss can literally only be described as Shin peering into Wu-Tang's mind and getting the brakes beaten off of him by that one gif of that lady lost in thought. On Sakamoto's front, he's also constantly getting caught for cheating, unable to successfully fool Wu-Tang in fear of being disqualified. So with all their handicaps taken away, Wu-Tang is about to win when suddenly the other triad members standing around, who are frustrated with the childish way Wu-Tang is handling what should have been just a cut and dry criminal kidnapping, decide they're gonna mutiny, which I'm not really sure what the thought process was here. Kill everyone and then bring Lu back to China to what? Unwillingly lead an entire criminal enterprise? But, you know, then I remembered that's why they're the lackeys and Wu-Tang is the brains of the operation. It's also why, after just a short flashback for motivation, Wu-Tang is able to somehow convince all of them that their guns were already pre-rigged to explode. They then all drop their guns and immediately put an end to the coup d'etat as the traitors receive the traditional family smackdown from the Sakamotos, proving that whole pen is mightier than the gun analogy. After returning to Sakamoto convenience and making Wu-Tang work part-time to make up for the time lost during his pointless gambling arc, it's revealed that most of what Wu-Tang wanted to offer as information were things we already knew. However, Wu-Tang does have something new to chew on, which is that Slur's signature X symbol was found at the scene of a murder in some random maximum security prison. 4 high-threat inmates were found butchered and burned beyond recognition right in front of it. However, the most peculiar piece of information is that since the prisoners were killed, more and more corpses have turned up using the same methods as the serial killers that have supposedly kicked the bucket. If Wu-Tang was a betting man And, well, we already know that he is. All of this leads to him believing the entire prison slaughter was staged. These 4 prisoners on death row have actually escaped into Japan and are now working for Slur to carry out his dirty work. We're then treated to a proper introduction of all 4 of these inmates who were previously on death row as they await their orders from Slur. Dump, a young woman sentenced to death for killing over 180 people. A psychopath who has fallen in love with the terrified expressions people make right before their death. Dump is quite promiscuous and looks for unsuspecting victims to quote-unquote show her affection to. This, of course, consists of murdering the ones that she fancies, almost always having post-nut clarity afterwards when realizing the victim just really wasn't as cute as she once thought, and simply just got caught in the moment. Dump was sentenced to death for the crimes of armed robbery, murder, and illegal disposal of bodies. Didn't know there was a legal way to do that. Saw is an older bachelor whose narcissistic tendencies and lack of remorse for others has led him to acquire a body count of 64 victims. Unlike the other prisoners, Saw is much more interested in getting to know his targets and understanding how he can hurt them the most. He's much more calculated than the others and more specific with who he chooses to focus on. Saw is fully aware of right and wrong, but chooses to walk the path of violence anyway, enjoying it all the while. Saw was sentenced to death for the crimes of murder, armed robbery, illegal disposal of bodies, and mutilation of corpses. Apart is a young adult male who faced severe trauma as a child. Apart's obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is debilitating to the point he gives in to the smallest trigger. Something like a foreign ingredient in a burger, or one missing manga volume in someone's collection can send Apart spiraling. Because of his differences, Apart was never able to truly connect with others. Eventually, being an outcast culminated in the worst possible coping mechanism: murder. Apart is responsible for taking the lives of over 200 victims and was handed the death sentence for the crimes of murder, kidnapping, and the mutilation of bodies. Last but not least, we have Minimalist, a large man with the highest kill count of the group. Minimalist is an impatient, self-serving person. The man kills for pleasure and isn't afraid to eliminate anything, person, or object that gets in his way. Minimalist is so strong, he can crush anything, even a full-grown adult, into a ball of flesh, a testament to his dedication for brutality. Minimalist was sentenced to death for, do you really need a reason, to be honest? Man starts walking around hydraulic pressing people into bowling balls? Without question, I want him off the streets. Guillotines, public execution, I want to know this maniac is gone. Anyway, Mr. Reindeer, barely recovering from the injuries Sakamoto gave him from Okutabi Lab, gives the serial killers a list of targets. People that are all threats to Slur's organization. And, of course, it's revealed that Sakamoto is one of these targets. Surprisingly, even Order members are on the bill like Nagumo, so Slur's getting bold, planning to use the death row prisoners to tie up any loose ends before making their next move. While most of the prisoners are happy to kill without much need for a reason, Kashima does remind them that if they're not careful, some of these targets might get the best of them. And in response, Minimalist just crushes his food tray, taking offense to Kashima claiming some fat ass like Sakamoto could ever stand up to them. The serial killers will remove all of these threats in less than a month, and if there isn't anything else to do after that, they're just gonna start randomly killing civilians. Kashima thinks about the kind of evil that's being released into the world, consciously recognizing the chaos this group of killers are about to create, but he chooses not to question Slur. After all, it's his fault for losing to Sakamoto anyway. Kashima can't complain about contingencies now. But at the very least, this scene does show Kashima truly meant what he said in the last arc, really believing that Slur's actions will create a better world. It's just, from our point of view, that perspective is really hard to grasp. Cutting back to present time, Wu-Tang warns the gang they're gonna want to leave the country if they want to be safe. These serial killers are not ordinary assassins. They might even be worse. But much to Wu-Tang's surprise, none of the Sakamoto family shares his concern. Not even Shin or Lu bat an eye after everything they've all been through. The only focus is preparing for the attack any way they can. If these serial killers really are that dangerous, they can't just stand idly by and do nothing, right? A sentence that although only spoken by Sakamoto, can be felt resonating from every member of the trio, showing how these three characters from entirely separate walks of life have all come together in unison to walk as one unit. Taro, Shin, and Lu, heck, even Heisuke, all share the same value in mind, which is making life at the convenience store, and therefore the community around it, safe for everyone involved. At the same time, 5 members of the Order are en route to personally dispose of the released prisoners themselves. The Order already received intel that the inmates are working for Slur, which is more than enough reason to hunt them, let alone the killers are now causing trouble on their territory. Nagumo, as well as Shishiba and Osaragi, who we met in the last arc, are present, but we're also introduced to another core member of the Order named Hyo, as well as an elderly swordsman named Takamura. Hyo is a much more serious straight man to everyone else's eccentric personalities, while the rest of the group wonders if Takamura is actually senile or not. However, not even old age disqualifies an Order member from being lethal, as Takamura displays the ability to almost slice the entire freeway in half merely after getting startled by a fly. With 5 insanely powerful Order members and only 4 unsuspecting serial killers, for a group created to maintain balance, this is the second arc they've acted as pure wildcard types that have the potential to derail the entire situation. And this time, they've brought an actual demon with them. But we'll get back to Takamura and the rest of the Order later. For now, we're shifting back to the main cast, as Taro himself is out training with Heisuke, while Shin and Lu have went to go buy more materials at a nearby shop. In the middle of Sakamoto catching bullets with fucking chopsticks, which is just insane by the way, Nagumo makes a pit stop on his own hunt for the serial killers to visit. Nagumo's smart enough to know once Sakamoto got wind of the situation, he's gonna make plans to fight the killers. And Nagumo was hoping to discourage Sakamoto from doing that, since the Order is already on the case. But even knowing a hit has been put out on the killers, Sakamoto can't stop pursuing these inmates. They've got information on Slur that he needs, and Sakamoto made a promise to his wife to take care of this bounty. However, this time, instead of joking, Nagumo is harshly honest to Sakamoto because they've known each other for so long. Nagumo flashes a copy of the target list given to all 4 of these killers, and Sakamoto is shocked to see his own threat level was only ranked as a B. Meanwhile, active Order members like Nagumo are considered S-rank threats. Now, Nagumo doesn't tell Sakamoto this to brag, well, maybe a little bit, but more to show how low Sakamoto has fallen. Even worse, how low on the totem pole his enemies consider him. If Nagumo's mockery couldn't get through to Sakamoto, the reality of that fact surely will. Someone who was once the greatest hitman in the world has now been reduced to a mid-tier opponent, a target the serial killers wouldn't even give a second thought. Except a retired hitman with friends and family might just be exactly what a certain killer is looking for. While Shin and Lu are shopping for supplies, they get sidetracked playing with all the dogs on display. Which, absolutely relatable. They don't even let me inside PetSmart anymore because I'll just take everything home with me. But despite all the cute doggos, Shin does not think they should be wasting time for too long. If they want to be of use to Sakamoto, they both have to get stronger. Suddenly though, every animal in the area begins to howl and growl. An ominous aura fills the air, as if all the creatures were seeing a ghost. Shin turns to see a skinny man laughing at what he would consider, not me, I think they're all great, but what he would consider stupid animals. This man, who we already know as Saw, one of the 4 inmates, is clearly the reason all the animals are entering fight or flight mode. Saw admits to being ex-military, a soldier who's watched plenty of people drop dead with no theatrics or spectacle, and he thinks pointless or quick deaths are a waste. That someone's final moments should be a drama to look at. So that's why, before Saw kills Sakamoto, he's going to take everything Sakamoto has ever loved first to make that kill as thrilling as possible. Before Shin can comprehend what he just heard, an axe rips through the air into Shin's side, launching Shin into the shelves next to them. Ironically, Saw claims he can't waste time on small fry and wants to get on to the main course of Sakamoto, so he's gonna kill him quick. Apparently, not viewing Shin or Lu as humans worth a dramatic ending, despite his earlier preaching. From the smoke, a crowbar flies at Saw, revealing Shin survived and wasn't sliced in half. Saw is just surprised that Shin was quick enough to react and block on such quick notice. Shin and Lu are surprised Saw knows them by name, to which Saw drops the bomb that Lu and Shin are both C and D ranked targets on Slur's list, respectively. It's here where reality smacks the two of them in the face, just as it did Sakamoto, and it hits Shin even harder, who, despite being a former assassin with a supernatural ability, ranks even lower than Lu, who isn't much of a threat unless she's drunk. It's possible, though, that this indirect encouragement is actually what the two of them needed to reach their next levels. Especially Shin, who takes this opportunity to dodge one of Saw's attacks and land a counter, demanding that after Shin and Lu win, Saw fixes Slur's broken ranking system. The bloodlust felt from Saw begins to lay an even thicker atmosphere of evil in the air. Impressed with Shin's tenacity, Saw offers to make their deaths interesting. But when Shin goes to read Saw's thoughts, that evil aura becomes paralyzing fear that clouds his clairvoyance. As Saw winds up, swinging his axe from a rope, the entire ceiling collapses under the weight of Saw's attacks. Shin and Lu are barely able to keep up as Saw spins his axe and continues to lay on pressure. Shin realizes that the dark cloud filling Saw's thoughts makes it nigh impossible to read for his attacks. So eventually, Saw rips open Shin's back as he tries to protect Lu, believing he's in complete control of the situation and calling them both boring. However, the duo reminds Saw not to underestimate them, or the Sakamoto family's tenacity, as they catch him off guard with a nail gun, and an even better duo than them, Axe body spray and lighter. Unfortunately, Saw's body durability is beyond natural. The serial killer casually shrugs off the flame attack and responds by causing an explosion of his own, whipping his axe into a nearby gas canister that blows up directly behind Shin and Lu, forcing Lu to grab Shin and tackle him out of the way, getting incapacitated in the blast, and making that previous hit of reality sink even deeper into the D-rank assassin's psyche. Even now, Shin needs to be protected. Shin wishes he could just be stronger, not wanting to let anyone down ever again. But as he lies wounded on the floor, Saw decides to kick the man while he's down, telling Shin that he disappointed him. For having such a cool little superpower, he claims Shin really just isn't that good at using it. Losing early is no problem for Saw, though. The faster he kills Shin and Lu, the quicker you can make his way over to Sakamoto's place and start slaughtering the entire family. As Saw's axe drops its killing blow towards Shin, we cut back to Sakamoto, who's enjoying a lunch break with Heisuke. The two of them wonder where Shin and Lu are, while also discussing Shin's potential as an assassin. And Sakamoto admits, even though Shin doesn't seem like much now, when the time comes, Shin will rise to the occasion. And almost on cue, as if for a moment Shin was able to listen in on that conversation, Shin thinks of Mr. Sakamoto, before suddenly, when we cut back to reality, Saw has missed his attack, and Shin is already standing behind him. At the same time, Saw, who was once the only one filling the room with aura, feels off about Shin's movements. Shrugging it off, before Saw can even complete another swing of his axe, Shin's already grabbed a hold of his arm. Baffled, as this means Shin would have had to block an attack Saw hadn't even finished making yet, Shin makes this mystery clear. He can see the future, speaking his new power into existence before Shin relentlessly delivers a beatdown to the stun-locked inmate. And from here on out, no matter what angle Saw comes from, Shin is not only able to outspeed him, it's as if Shin already knows what's about to happen. And after Saw is smacked to the ground for the second time, Shin reveals the evil cloud that was keeping Saw's thoughts hidden actually forced Shin to fine-tune his clairvoyance and perceive even more acute signals. reading deeply into Saw's motor functions. The speed at which Shin can read a person's actions now almost exceeds the speed at which the person commits the action themselves. But just when Shin moves in to make his finishing blow, his entire body gives out. The overexertion of this new power exhausts all of Shin's stamina, keeping him frozen just long enough for Saw to reverse Uno card the situation and launch a counter slash that could be checkmate for Shin. A hand suddenly clasps Saw's cheek from behind before that attack lands though. In no time at all, the inmate is rocketed into another part of the store. Now that Shin has stood his ground, it's time for Lu motherfucking Xiao Tang to step in and protect the family. While Shin and Saw were scrapping, Lu got into the ethanol cabinet of the store. And as you know from Sugar Park, it's revealed that when Lu gets heavily intoxicated, she becomes a master of combat. However, even Shin is surprised Lu would go to these lengths, noticing that Lu's at a level of drunk he's never even seen before. Which, I mean, rightfully so. Girl basically drank an entire bottle of fucking fuel. Of course, she'd be a little charged up. But Shin surmises that Lu must be so drunk, she thinks she's back in the Triad crime family. Since he was already close to defeat in the prior battle, Saw is definitely no match for Lu's drunken antics. Her speed and reaction time is even quicker than Shin's future sight, casually grabbing Saw's own weapon by the rope and throwing his own attacks back at him. And within seconds, Lu forces Saw into submission, putting a spade to his neck and inflicting fear, the likes of which Saw's probably inflicted himself upon many others before. As Saw squeals for Lu to get off, the Triad Princess coldly remarks it's time to have one finger removed for every victim Saw's ever killed. And if you can do the math on that one, I'm scared to find out where the other 49 cuts are coming from after his toes are all gone. When Saw protests, Lu just stabs him again, asking who gave him permission to speak. The once big talker, who thought he was above all the other inmates, is now on his knees begging for forgiveness from the people he was literally just about to kill. Rightfully though, Lu questions Saw if he's ever shown that kind of mercy to the people that's asked him for it. Upon realization he's not getting out of this one, Saw turns tail and runs as fast as he can in absolute fear of his evil deeds coming to an end once and for all. Finally faced with death from his own point of view. And Saw can't accept it. He cries for the two of them to get away from him, thinking to himself how quote-unquote bad endings are only fun when they involve literally anyone else other than him. Saw doesn't want to die yet. He hasn't gotten his fill of torturing others. But at this point, his fate is sealed. Not even safe in his own head anymore, Saw looks up to find his mind being read by Shin. And knowing there's no redemption story coming after this, both Shin and Lu unapologetically land their finishing blows on Saw, knocking him lights out. Meanwhile, at a nearby shrine, the tag team of Osaragi and Shishiba are performing their tradition of eating pork cutlets before a mission for good luck. But as they're taking their time, a call comes in from Nagumo, who claims to already be zeroing in on his target. In usual Nagumo fashion, he passive-aggressively teases them about how long it takes for them to get started with their jobs, hinting that everything might be over by the time all that pork digests. Shishiba just brushes this off, thinking for once they might be able to take a break, but Osaragi gets annoyed with Nagumo and scarfs down her food so they can start the search immediately. Shishiba hasn't even finished his own meal though, and would rather take his time, reminding Osaragi that it's the impatient assassins that die first. Ironically enough though, she's already halfway down the road. Stopping to pray, Osaragi wishes she will get the lucky chance to kill one of the inmates all by herself. And as if her prayers were answered by the divine itself, Dump is right next to Osaragi, recognizing her from the list of targets. Like a rocket, a lethal spike ripples through the air from Dump's palm and stabs Osaragi through the shrine wall. But thankfully, Osaragi hadn't given her offering yet and was able to deflect the blow with the yen she had on hand. Surprisingly, even without the offering, Osaragi's wishes are about to come true free of charge, to which she plans on repaying the gods for this good fortune by teaching Dump the correct way to give thanks. Osaragi slips behind Dump before she can even turn around, slams Dump's skull into the statue beside them with enough force to shatter the rock with Dump's forehead. She claps Dump upside the dome twice and then reunites her face through the ground again, making sure her nose takes a pit stop through the wooden offering cart. And you'll see right away, the first notable difference in this fight compared to the one with Saw is how easily Osaragi is able to dance around Dump, who is already a huge step above Saw, considering she's able to project large spines from her body in multiple locations of varying sizes and sharpness. Dump can extend these spikes far from her body, making it hard for Osaragi to get close. And despite dodging almost every attack, Osaragi's weapon suitcase gets lost amidst the struggle, putting her at a disadvantage. However, just like Sakamoto, Osaragi and the other Order members tend to be just as deadly with their bare hands as they are with tools. Decapitating a statue of Buddha with a roundhouse kick, Osaragi follows the superhuman feat by blue lock striking its stone head with an insane amount of force right into Dump's fucking torso. And as Dump tries to regain ground in this fight, she comments on how desecrating an icon like Buddha should be bad luck, but Osaragi, in response, wonders how anyone can see the gods as anything other than benevolent. The way that Osaragi sees it, if she were the gods, people like her and Dump, humans with no other purpose than to kill, flat out would not exist. The fact that her and Dump are alive right now proves that the gods are too kind for their own good, reminding us that at the end of the day, Osaragi and Dump are both killers. However, they represent two different sides of the same coin. Dump, with her twisted idea of love, has wanted nothing more than someone to only have eyes for her, becoming a morbid fascination with one-sided love and creating relationships where Dump has all of the power. She controls her victims through terror, because when they're scared, they truly are, in that moment, only thinking of Dump. Quite a selfish reason to kill, where Osaragi chooses to stand in the god's place as judge, jury, and executioner, taking pity on the god's tolerance and handing out punishment where she thinks they are unable to, while Dump indiscriminately chooses her next victim, tossing them aside when she's done with them out of pointless boredom. Osaragi finds purpose through eliminating killers from the world in the name of balance and peace. While Dump kills only for herself, Osaragi kills, at least what she believes to be for others. And for once, Dump is given someone's undivided attention without needing to strike fear into them first, as people like Dump give Osaragi a reason to keep on living. And for that, Osaragi loves Dump unconditionally. As Osaragi winds up her buzzsaw, conveniently located right where they ended up, Dump finally sees Osaragi's beauty for what it truly is, before she's cleaved in two with one swift finishing motion, severed with all the tender love and care Dump would have wanted. We cut back to the variety store as an exhausted Shin and surprisingly not comatose from alcohol poisoning Lu are still unconscious. The unfinished Saw, however, since, no killing in the Sakamoto family, manages to wake early and sneaks off to the nearest taxi. Despite Saw facing the consequences of his actions only a moment earlier, he hasn't learned anything. Like a little weasel, as soon as he escapes, Saw goes right back to being evil. His confidence comes back pretty quick for someone that just got beat up, as Saw stole this taxi from a customer that already paid and is more than happy to tell this customer to shove it and that they'll have to wait on wherever they're going. Thankfully though, karma just made its second stop on the Humble train because the person Saw just stole a cab from is Hyo, one of the Order members on the serial killer case. Hyo cracks the biggest smile in the back seat and happily obliges Saw's demands. In fact, wherever Saw's going, Hyo's going right with him. Back at Mr. Reindeer's apartment, Kashima is on the phone with his master Slur in regards to the fact that two of their serial killers have already been disposed of, but neither of them seem worried by this development at all. Even worse, it seems like everything's going exactly according to plan. But before we can discover what that plan is though, Kashima is ambushed by one of the remaining killers, Apart, who was waiting in Kashima's apartment to attack him. Apart has a string wrapped around Kashima's neck ready to pop before the reindeer can even get an attack off. Kashima acts like he has no idea why Apart would betray them, but Apart tells Reindeer to cut the act, admitting he can smell their bullshit from miles away. Sure, Apart is thankful that they freed him from jail and everything, but he's always been a solo act. He hates being lied to and manipulated. It's here where it's revealed that Apart has been going off the rails and slaughtering multiple people that aren't even on the approved list, and follows this by completely dismantling Kashima's $1 million man body, which is really fucked up because bro just got that shit put back together. Apart declares he wants to connect with as many people as possible, which is just code for going on a mass killing spree with no real supervision. But despite Kashima's worry, Slur, who's still on the phone and heard the whole ordeal, encourages Kashima to relax and simply let the chaos continue. It might pay off highly to let their little experiment go out of control. And right at that moment, danger also rears its head at Sakamoto's convenience. Minimalist, the last remaining serial killer on Slur's payroll, has just arrived, and the only person guarding the store is Aoi, Sakamoto's wife. Which, in all fairness, probably not the greatest idea to leave your wife alone with 4 random serial killers targeting your family. Aoi is currently on the phone with Sakamoto, who's met up with the wounded Shin and Lu to take them to Granny Mia, a holistic healing doctor Sakamoto still trusts from his assassin days. Sakamoto is a bit concerned if Aoi will be safe by herself running the store, but Aoi assures Sakamoto everything is fine. Almost on cue, Minimalist walks in, and suddenly, the phone line is cut, leaving Sakamoto confused and in the dark as to what could have happened. To explain the place that Sakamoto took Shin and Lu to, it's the office of Granny Mia, a legendary healer for assassins who, using methods such as acupuncture and herbal remedies, is known to be able to fix any battle wound possible, earning her the title of God Hands. Granny Mia is able to reignite Shin's stamina, returning his clairvoyant powers after he exhausted them, and informs Shin of the massive strain future sight can cause to his body. Granny Mia figures that Shin can probably only get away with using that ability for 5 minutes before collapsing again. Granny Mia also does a checkup on Sakamoto, admitting she barely recognizes him anymore due to the weight he's gained. Something that Granny Mia harps on him for, reiterating that Sakamoto's retirement has led people like Nagumo to surpass him in strength. And despite this just being another jab to Sakamoto's ego, it is a harsh reminder that Sakamoto is going to be facing enemies much closer to his former peak than he even currently is. As after 5 years of hiatus, Granny Mia deduces that Sakamoto's only at a mere 30% of the strength he used to be at. Unfortunately, this isn't a battle that Sakamoto can just throw in the towel for. Taro's whole family is on the line, extended and all. He can't let these animals run wild any longer. Respecting that Sakamoto refuses to give up, despite the odds not being in his favor, Granny Mia smacks a pressure point in Sakamoto's lower danshan, claiming this will help his out-of-shape body bring out more of its dormant qualities. The gang gets a call from Heisuke, who, attempting to use the height of the Tokyo Tower, has been scouting far and wide for the remaining serial killers. Though, no matter how much they should stick out like a sore thumb, Heisuke just can't seem to find a single one of them. Ironically enough, everyone's spending so much time looking for these inmates, they would have had a better job finding them if they just stayed at home and did nothing, clearly. Imposing his deathly aura throughout the convenience store, Minimalist demands to know where Sakamoto is. But despite the obvious danger, Aoi calmly admits her husband isn't home. So to get her to understand, Minimalist crushes the entire cash register, money and all, into a tiny pocket-sized ball. Aoi is 1, fucking shook, but realistically 2, at the same time, asks Minimalist the same question I would after witnessing some crazy shit like that, which is, who's Who's replacing all that money that was inside that register? And what happened to it? Minimalist rips the counter in two and grabs Sakamoto's wife by the throat, demanding that she start to cooperate before he makes her look just like that cash register. But before the man can even finish his sentence, Minimalist's arm gets fucking broken. Aoi snaps that shit right at the elbow from below and then shanks Minimalist in the neck in one fluid motion. Minimalist falls to his knees, but surprisingly, there's no blood and he's shocked to be alive, but honestly, he's way more shocked to know Sakamoto's wife has hands like that. However, when Minimalist blinks, he realizes he's not really looking at Aoi Sakamoto. He's locking eyes with Nagumo, the Order's master of disguise, who laughs cheekily, realizing he accidentally misplaced his shiv with a toy knife, which is kind of funny to think the only reason Minimalist wasn't dead in one shot right there is because Nagumo canonically fucking plays too much. Also, side note, would hate to be the next person Nagumo pulls this prank on, since the real knife is what's coming next. So turns out Sakamoto, thankfully, was not dumb enough to leave his family unattended and alone in the convenience store. Quite the opposite, in fact. Sakamoto actually called in Nagumo to look over the store while he was out training, repaying a debt Nagumo accrued probably at some point in their youth. Nagumo agreed, since realistically, they actually both get what they want this way. Nagumo gets to act like a good person, kill his target, and cut out an IOU at the same time. Much like Osaragi, Nagumo puts the power gap between the serial killers and the Order on full display, taking the time mid-fight to steal Minimalist's phone and check for Slur's identity on it. And despite Nagumo politely asking Minimalist to not make a mess of the store since he's the one currently responsible for it, Minimalist proceeds to still trash the entire place in his attempts to land even one hit on Nagumo. During this rampage, Minimalist opens a door to the freezer section, and suddenly his own reflection snaps through the glass and starts choking him out. It's never explained how Nagumo's disguises actually work or how and why he's able to pull them off so quickly, but to fool a man into thinking he's looking at his own reflection has to be a supernatural feat. I cannot accept any other explanations for this. Even with the huge size difference between the two of them, Nagumo is casually able to lift Minimalist up with one hand. And after finding out he has no useful intel, Nagumo decides to finish the job up quick, no foreplay. Opening his suitcase, Nagumo brandishes his signature weapon, a multi-tool-esque Swiss Army knife with 6 different functions. Just like Minimalist, Nagumo gets bored with killing. So by using a die and rolling for a number, Nagumo can spice things up a bit by never knowing what weapon he'll get next. Nagumo is polite enough to offer Minimalist a choice in what number he picks, but Minimalist declines since he still seems to think he has skin in this game. Nagumo performs a sweet magic trick, clapping the die away and making Minimalist cough it up like a hairball, confirming Nagumo is, in fact, just a wizard amongst assassins, and amongst all the confusion, Minimalist spits the die out on number 3. But by the time he could even look down at that number, Nagumo was already straddling his head from behind and severs that dome skin from bone. Standing amongst the demolished convenience store, Nagumo decides he might as well crack open a celebratory uncooked can of soup, as at this point, there's so much profit loss after Minimalist's tantrum, another missing product won't hurt Sakamoto's bottom line any more than it already has been. Back at Tokyo Tower, Heisuke's 2 brain cells are struggling to comprehend glass ceilings. However, his hyperfixation on the glass does pay off because he notices a part on the ground floor, attempting to, connect with more people. Of course, we already know this means physically cutting people open, and right before a part cheese grates this unsuspecting citizen, Heisuke's already lined up a shot, firing a ricochet bullet that bounces off all the broken glass somehow, sending itself flying right into a part's chest. But the serial killer was able to catch the bullet just in time with his hand, wrapped in multiple thick layers of string to dull the damage. Heisuke compares the part's combat ability to Sakamoto's, before realizing the property damage on Tokyo Tower's glass ceiling is probably worse than a US student loan debt. And to make things worse, not that it gets much worse than life-crippling debt, a part has Spider-Man swung his way all the way up the tower and crash lands right onto Heisuke's level. and it is not long before the marksman is severely outclassed. Heisuke's entire rifle gets dismantled before a shot can even fire, but before cutting him open, Apart tries to bond with Heisuke, admitting the reason he likes using threads so much is because they symbolize the connection between people, prolonging the interaction just long enough for an elevator to reach the current floor. Sakamoto emerges and perception blitzes Apart, smacking him away from Heisuke. And as much as Apart speaks about relationships and understanding, true connection is on display here with how much Heisuke was able to rely on Sakamoto in this instance, firing a bullet signal when things got tough as Sakamoto was on his way that let Taro not only know to hurry, but that a serial killer was found. Now with all that tension released by Granny Mia and body feeling light, Sakamoto squares up with the still standing Apart, who, after feeling the power coming off of Sakamoto's punch, wonders if he will finally be the one to understand him. Sakamoto quickly realizes that he needs to go all out right away if he wants to stand a chance against Apart. But for some reason, no matter what he does, Sakamoto can't enter his slimmed down form. Apart is able to bring down the ceiling with his thread slashes. And even though Sakamoto is great at using the environment to his advantage, Apart's strings truly do offer him a level of versatility that can match Sakamoto in a fight. The crippling OCD is definitely a handicap, but still, Apart presents enough of a threat level that makes Sakamoto, of all people, wonder if he can really win without any weapons. And for someone who in the last arc won a fight with a discount sticker, a lead pencil, and a fucking dream, that really says something about how strong Apart is. As the two of them continue to struggle, Sakamoto's body continues to grow more agile over the course of the fight, finally picking up why he can't slim down and what Granny Mia did to his body. By releasing pressure from his Danshan acupoint, Granny Mia allowed Sakamoto's body to adapt to all of that extra weight he put on, perking up his bones and unleashing latent flexibility that only when Sakamoto truly accepts his current self and stops relying on slimming down would awaken a hidden strength inside of him, letting Sakamoto tap into his full power at all times, whether he's in skinny mode or not. This boost puts Sakamoto in the lead against Apart, gaining enough momentum to strike the serial killer through multiple sections of the Tokyo Tower. All the while, Apart is overwhelmed and unable to defend himself. However, he continues to struggle. This is the longest fight Apart has ever been in. He's never, quote-unquote, connected with someone for so long before. And since they're so close now, Apart hopes he can give Sakamoto an exposition dump about his backstory. But in response, Sakamoto says he doesn't have time for that shit, which I humbly support. Fuck Apart, he killed like 200 people, we do not forgive you. That being said, as Apart continues to keep up with Sakamoto in battle, the inmate manages to Family Guy cut away us into his backstory against our will. As a child, Apart was a social outcast. He didn't have any friends or receive any real love from his mother either. However, the first connection Apart can remember is the one he had with his father, the only person who ever took the time to be kind to Apart and attempt to teach him right from wrong. Unfortunately, his dad worked a lot and was only able to really encourage Apart from afar. Every time Apart tried to make a new connection, it would end miserably, even when he tried with his own mother. One day, in anger, Apart ripped apart the doll his father gave him, and eventually, this became Apart's coping ritual every time he would get rejected. Until one day, Apart happily welcomed his father home to a room full of blood, his mother silently judging from the corner behind him. Apart had, instead of a doll, torn apart an actual live animal, as if this was some kind of normal thing. In genuine care for his son, Apart's father took him to doctors for brains and personality scans. And although his father seems terrified, Apart just can't tell what he did wrong. His father almost strangles the doctor when they keep telling him there's nothing clinically wrong with Apart. But his father just can't accept that his own son would kill an animal like that in cold blood, not his son. Seeing his father in distress, Apart reaches out to comfort his dad, who recoils in terror at the thought of being touched by a monster like him. And it was in that moment when Apart saw the disgust in his father's eyes. Something snapped. Instead of accepting that what Apart thought was his only true connection to the world was severed, Apart murdered his dad in cold blood and the doctor, ripping them to pieces, just like the doll that gave Apart solace not too long ago. And as Apart played inside of his own father's cadaver, he couldn't help but feel joy, because now Apart knew for sure, on the inside at least, his dad was the same as he was. In fact, as every murder Apart continues to commit confirms, everyone in the entire world is the same as Apart. And it's impossible for him to be alone, because this one truth connects all of humanity. This is why Apart needs to look inside of Sakamoto. He has to make sure they're the same, just like everyone else, especially with how equally matched they are. But Sakamoto shatters Apart's illusion as he continues to endure his threads. Hearing the words of his wife, Sakamoto tells Apart that his way of thinking is wrong. Embodying the lessons that his family has taught him, Sakamoto has come to realize by now that love for his wife isn't what stops him from killing people. It's the fact that by taking someone's life, you're removing that person's place in so many other lives as well. Killing can only sever connection. It could never foster it. Apart knows nothing of human contact, and this twisted coping mechanism Apart has created is only a way for him to run away from ever actually understanding somebody. A fear of rejection that has fully manifested into complete delusion. Apart is different from a serial killer like Dump, who kills because she selfishly wants to hoard people's attention. Apart takes people apart because deep down, he's always felt different. When the one person who actually loved Apart suddenly changed up and had that same look in his eye as everyone else, the only thing that could keep Apart to feel normal was knowing, even if he's different on the outside, at least everyone's same on the inside. Something that Apart needs to constantly reaffirm through killing, or that lie will cease to hold up in his head. It's why when Sakamoto, the second person Apart has ever shared a quote-unquote connection with, rejects Apart's philosophy, it causes him to erupt in anger, cutting down multiple core pillars that are holding up the integral structure of Tokyo Tower, and declaring to Sakamoto he will not be arranging his limbs neatly when they're all done, proving that Apart's desire to prove his own personal truth about human connection overrides even his obsessive-compulsive disorder. As the Tokyo Tower begins to collapse, the tower falling symbolizes Apart's final descent into darkness. Sakamoto, unwillingly, has become the last thread in Apart's downfall. By connecting with all the people caught in Tokyo Tower's destruction, i.e. committing a domestic terrorism with a large potential death count, Apart is reaching the point of no return. If he's unable to find true connection here, he never will. And whether you want to argue if someone that's killed hundreds of people still has yet to reach the point of return, we don't have time to argue that, because Sakamoto needs to hold up an entire monument with nothing but willpower and its own electrical cables. Despite being the only thing keeping hundreds of people alive right now, Sakamoto is unfortunately left perfectly vulnerable for Apart's kill shot. However, right before Sakamoto closes his eyes and says goodnight, a third killing intent immediately makes its presence known in the area. Sensing bloodlust from this high up, Sakamoto turns to notice Old Man Takamura, that elderly order member from before, making his way towards Tokyo Tower. But he's way too far away to save Sakamoto from here. What's he gonna do? This bad grandpa just cut out the legs under the entire tower in one slash, making it balance out and stop collapsing. Sheathing his sword right after and just turning to take a cab like he put in a hard day's work. In only 2 appearances, Takamura has solidified himself as one of the coolest characters in the series and someone definitely not to mess with, even if you're multiple miles in the air away from him. Anyway, off Takamura goes, mumbling to himself and wandering to the closest tapioca factory for a job well done. Meanwhile, this confusion gives Sakamoto the perfect opportunity to slip out of Apart's grasp and deliver a crippling counterattack. throwing the serial killer across the tower and beginning to use his own threads against him, whipping apart around in the air using the strings tied to his hands as rope. Sakamoto slams apart back into Tokyo Tower and snaps all of his wire using pieces of debris from the tower's previous destruction. But as a part falls down into the abyss of his own making, Sakamoto catches his lifeline, telling the convicted, death row, repeat offending serial killer that it's never too late to turn your life around. And as long as a part is willing to try to change, Sakamoto promises he'll never let go of this new connection. You know, after Sakamoto lassos his ass into next Tuesday and sends a part bouncing down every flight of stairs of that damn tower, Sakamoto carries a part's unconscious body out of Tokyo Tower before the police pin all of that property damage on Sakamoto because the convenience store definitely ain't popping like that. And honestly, when he gets back to the store, Nagumo already set him back a couple years financially already. A part wakes up, surrounded by the smell of a nice meal and the warm love of the family sharing that food around him. Confused as to how he got from Tokyo Tower to here, he's unable to hide his thoughts from Shin's clairvoyance. However, a part quickly discovers that the family means him no harm. They don't want to kill a part or use him. They just want to get some information on Slur and go their separate ways. Something that a part appreciates, as this might be the first genuine time he's ever been treated like a normal human being. Because of this kindness, a part chooses to trust them, also considering he's given them every reason not to trust him, and they were still willing to take that chance. A part reveals to Sakamoto and friends the true agenda behind the release of the death row prisoners. Nagumo and the other members of the order had already figured out that the final list of targets for the prisoners would eventually pit them all up against each other, meaning their employment by Slur truly was always temporary. The killer's main objective was to distract the high-ranking members of the Assassin Association and have them all searching for the escaped convicts, leaving the JAA headquarters running on a skeleton crew of lower-level employees, making the entire organization's stronghold a sitting duck just waiting to be hit, giving Slur the perfect opportunity to take down the Assassin Association once and for all. A record of these events later would call this day an unprecedented incident in JAA history. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit that like button so I know you want the next part of this as soon as possible, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.